The stars looked different at the edge of charted space. Commander Adam Pierce stood at the viewing deck of the exploration vessel, Starlight Venture, watching the unknown cosmos spread before him. After 20 years of space exploration, he still felt a thrill when facing the unknown. "Commander, we're picking up unusual energy readings," said Lieutenant Susan Beck from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. Adam turned from the view. "What kind of readings?" "Nothing I've seen before, sir. It's about 3,000 kilometers ahead, near that cluster of space debris." Dr. Olivia Grant, the ship's xenobiologist, joined them at the main console. Her job was to study new life forms, but lately their 6-month mission had found only empty planets and lifeless moons. "Finally something interesting," she said, studying the readings. "Could be dormant biological material, or something completely new." Adam nodded. "Kelly, move us closer. Slow approach. Let's see what we're dealing with." Pilot Kelly Morris guided the Starlight Venture forward. The ship was Earth's pride, built for peaceful exploration with a crew of 35 humans and 5 alien specialists. Their mission was simple: find new civilizations and establish friendly contact. As they approached the debris field, Engineer Ben Harris frowned at his screen. "Sir, the energy pattern is changing. It's almost like it's responding to our presence." "Full." "Stop," Adam ordered. Something in his gut told him to be careful. 20 years in space had taught him to listen to that feeling. Too late. The debris, a dull gray mass that had seemed like nothing more than space rocks, began to move. Not like rocks floating in space, but with purpose. The pieces pulled together, forming a swirling cloud of matter that glowed with faint blue light. "What is that?" Susan whispered. Dr. Grant's face had gone pale. "It matches the description in the ancient Centaurian texts. The Voidborn." "The what?" Adam asked. "A cosmic predator. The texts called them consumers of stars. They were believed extinct for thousands of years." She looked up at Adam with fear in her eyes. "They feed on energy and matter, all of it." Before Adam could respond, the ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim red of emergency power. "Status report," Adam called. Ben's voice shook as he answered. "It's draining our power systems. Main engines offline. Life support at 60% and falling." Through the viewing window, Adam watched as the cloud surrounded the ship, pressing against the hull like a curious animal testing its prey. "All hands, battle stations," Adam ordered, though he knew their weapons would likely be useless. "Dr. Grant, what do the texts say about fighting these things?" Olivia shook her head. "They don't. The records only mention that entire star systems went dark when the Voidborn passed through." A scream echoed from the lower deck. Adam grabbed the ship communicator. "Report! It's inside!" came Engineer Rita Dawson's panicked voice. "It came through the hull in engineering. It took Martinez and Chen. They just disappeared into it." Adam felt cold dread wash over him. "Through solid metal?" "Evacuate engineering. Everyone to the central hub." "Sir," Communications Officer Frank Mercer called out, "we should send a warning to Earth. If this thing gets past us..." Adam nodded grimly. "Do it. Full data packet. Everything we've learned." As Frank worked quickly at his station, more screams came from different parts of the ship. The creature was spreading, passing through walls and floors as if they weren't there. "Power at 40%, Ben reported. Whatever this thing is, it's eating through our systems faster than anything I've ever seen." Adam made a hard decision. "Prepare the quantum drive for overload." Kelly looked up in shock. "Sir, that would destroy the ship." "And hopefully this thing with it," Adam replied. "If this creature reaches populated space, billions could die." A dark mist began to seep through the walls of the bridge. It moved like liquid smoke, swirling and reaching with tendrils that seemed almost curious. "Everyone back," Adam ordered, drawing his energy pistol. He fired into the mist. The beam hit the darkness and the mist paused. Then, instead of burning away, the darkness swelled, growing larger and brighter. "It's absorbing the energy," Dr. Grant said. "Don't use energy." Weapons, too late, Adam realized his mistake. The creature surged forward faster now, Lieutenant Beck was closest to it. She tried to run, but a tendril wrapped around her leg. She screamed as her body was pulled into the darkness, disappearing completely. "Quantum message ready?" Frank called. "But our transmitter is failing. Send it now," Adam ordered, backing away from the advancing darkness. Frank hit the transmit button. The ship shuddered as the last of their power was directed into the quantum burst, sending their warning across light years of space directly to Earth. "Message sent," Frank confirmed just before a tendril of darkness swept across his station, consuming him in seconds. In the next 10 minutes, half the crew vanished into the growing cloud of darkness. The Voidborn filled more of the ship with each person it took. Adam, Dr. Grant, and 5 others made a last stand in the central hub, sealed behind emergency doors that wouldn't hold for long. "The quantum drive overload," Adam said to Ben. "Can you still trigger it?" Ben worked on a portable device, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Yes, but the timer is damaged. Someone will have to stay to manually activate it." Adam nodded. "I'll do it. The rest of you take the last escape pod." Dr. Grant grabbed his arm. "Adam, the pod won't get far enough before the explosion, and there's no guarantee this will even kill the creature." "We have to try," Adam said. "If this thing reaches Earth..." The darkness seeped through the edges of the door, reaching into the room like probing fingers. "It's here," whispered Kelly. "We're out of time." As the creature breached their final sanctuary, Adam knew they had failed. Their only hope now was that their warning would give Earth time to prepare for what was coming. The darkness surrounded them, hungry and unstoppable. Within hours, the Starlight Venture drifted silent and empty, its hull intact but its crew gone. The Voidborn, now twice its original size, pulled away from the vessel and moved with purpose toward the distant light of populated space. 3 months after the loss of the Starlight Venture, Admiral Catherine Summers stood in the war room of Earth's defense headquarters. The massive holographic display showed the current crisis in terrifying detail. Red dots marked planets and stations where the Voidborn had been spotted. There were too many red dots now. "Another colony lost in the Proxima system," reported General Alan Wright, his face lined with exhaustion. "That's the 5th this week." Catherine rubbed her temples. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. None of them had. "How many survivors?" "None, Admiral. 3,000 people gone." The room fell silent. Around the table sat representatives from 17 alien civilizations that formed the Galactic Alliance. They had come together to face this threat, but so far nothing had worked. Ambassador Zral of the blue-skinned Telleran stood up. "Our energy shields failed against the creatures. They simply passed through as if the shields weren't there." "Same with our phase cannons," added Commander Pedro Garcia. "The blasts went straight through them. When we increased power, the creatures actually grew larger." Catherine turned to Dr. Noah Wilson, Earth's leading xenobiologist who had taken over after Dr. Grant was lost with the Starlight Venture. "Doctor, do you have anything new for us?" Noah approached the holographic display. At 45, his hair was already completely gray from stress. "We've made some progress understanding what these things are." He expanded an image showing the swirling dark mass of a void-born entity. "They exist partly in our reality and partly in somewhere else. They operate on a quantum level, which is why physical weapons pass through them, and energy weapons only make them stronger." "So they're invincible?" asked General Wright. "Not exactly," Noah replied. "We've observed that they avoid certain radiation frequencies. It doesn't harm them, but they move away from it. It's the only reaction we've seen that isn't feeding or growth." Ambassador Kryn of the insect-like Verlocs chittered nervously. "The Voidborn have split into at least 37 distinct entities. Our homeworld is completely surrounded." Catherine studied the map. The Voidborn had first appeared at the edge of explored space 3 months ago. Now they had spread across 3 galactic quadrants. Earth was still safe, but for how long? "The death toll?" she asked quietly. Pedro checked his datapad. "Conservative estimate, 3.2 billion across all affected systems." The number hung in the air like a physical weight. "What about communication?" Catherine asked, turning to Dr. Eliza Jordan, head of the telepathic contact team. Dr. Jordan looked haunted. We've lost 3 more telepaths. When they touch the void-born consciousness, She hesitated. They break. Their minds can't process what they experience. The latest casualty had been Dr. Jordan's own sister, a powerful telepath who had volunteered despite the risks. She had screamed for hours before finally falling into a coma. So we can't talk to them, can't fight them, and can't stop them, General Wright summarized grimly. What options does that leave us? Noah stepped forward again. There's one possibility we haven't tried. The Voidborn are growing exponentially, but they seem drawn to concentrated energy sources, ships, power, plants-populated areas. If we evacuate key worlds and shut down major energy signatures, we might slow their advance. Catherine nodded slowly. An evacuation of that scale has never been attempted. She turned to the Alliance representatives. But we have no choice. We need to coordinate the largest evacuation in galactic history. The next weeks passed in a blur of desperate activity. Massive transport ships carried people away from planets in the Voidborn's path. Earth opened its borders, accepting refugees from a dozen worlds. Every available ship was pressed into service. But it wasn't enough. The colony world of New Eden, the evacuation was still underway when the Voidborn arrived. Catherine watched the live feed from her command center, feeling sick as the dark cloud descended on the spaceport where thousands still waited for transport. Get those ships in the air now, she ordered over the emergency channel. The camera showed civilians running in panic as the darkness spread across the landing field. 3 transport ships managed to lift off. 2 others, still loading passengers, were enveloped by the swirling entity. The ships remained intact, but everyone inside simply vanished as the darkness passed through the hulls. Cut the feed, Catherine ordered quietly. That night in her private quarters, Catherine studied the latest reports. The Voidborn were moving faster now, as if they had learned to travel more efficiently. At their current rate of expansion, they would reach Earth within 2 months. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Enter. Noah Wilson stepped inside, looking even more exhausted than before. Admiral, I have something. He placed a data pad on her desk. The screen showed a strange pattern of light and energy. What am I looking at? She asked. A recording from the Starlight venture included in their final transmission. We've been analyzing it for weeks, but we finally cracked the corrupted data. Noah pointed to a swirling pattern. That's the Voidborn in its earliest observed form. And this, he pointed to another pattern, is its internal structure. It's not random. Catherine leaned closer. It looks almost like a language, Noah finished, or at least a pattern of information. These entities aren't just mindless predators. They're communicating, processing information, perhaps even thinking. Can we use this to communicate with them? Noah's excitement faded. That's the problem. The pattern is so alien, so complex, our computers can barely begin to analyze it. It would take decades to decode naturally. We don't have decades, Catherine said. No, Noah agreed. But it gives us something to work with. If we can't fight them or run from them, maybe we can still talk to them. Somehow. As Noah left, Catherine turned back to the map showing the Voidborn spread. A new alert flashed. Another colony lost. Another 300,000 lives gone in minutes. Time was running out for humanity and its allies. Their last hope now lay with the scientists and diplomats at Space Station Horizon, orbiting Jupiter. If they couldn't find a way to communicate with the Voidborn soon, there would be no one left to save. Space Station Horizon floated like a silver spider web around Jupiter's orange glow. Originally built as a research facility, it had transformed into humanity's last fortress in the 8 months since the Voidborn first appeared. Captain Elaine Murphy stood at the main control room window, watching the defensive fleet positioned in a protective ring around the station. 200 ships, all that remained of Earth's once mighty space force, and the contributions of their alien allies. All ships in position, Captain, reported Officer Greg Hudson from his console. Elaine nodded. At 35, she was younger than most captains. But the war against the Voidborn had created rapid promotions as officers were lost. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and lines of worry had formed around her eyes. "Status of the evacuation?" she asked. "Final transports left Earth 6 hours ago," Greg answered. "They'll reach the safety zone beyond Neptune by tomorrow." Earth was nearly empty now. 10 billion people scattered to distant colonies or crammed into emergency shelters on Mars and the outer moons. Only essential personnel remained behind. And the Voidborn? Greg switched the main screen to show a swirling mass of darkness approaching from Earth's orbit. It was massive, larger than any they had encountered before. "It will reach us in approximately 4 hours," he said quietly. Elaine took a deep breath. She knew the reality. Their weapons would do little against the creature. This wasn't a battle they could win. It was just about buying time for the evacuees to reach safety. "Inform all ships, battle stations in 3 hours. Until then, let the crews rest." In the living quarter section of the station, Chief Engineer Paul Reeves checked the massive engines one last time. The station had been retrofitted with an experimental drive system that could, if necessary, fly the station away from Jupiter. It wouldn't outrun the Voidborn, but it might confuse it long enough for the remaining ships to escape. Paul wiped sweat from his forehead and headed back to his family's quarters. When the crisis began, he had been given the chance to send his family to safety, but his wife Janet had refused to leave without him, and so they stayed, along with their 7-year-old daughter Lily. He found Lily sitting by the large observation window in the common area, her small face peaceful as she watched the swirling clouds of Jupiter below. Her blonde hair was tied in 2 neat braids, and she held her favorite stuffed rabbit. "What you looking at, sweetie?" Paul asked, sitting beside her. "The storm," Lily said, pointing to Jupiter's great red spot. "It's pretty." Paul smiled sadly. Somehow Lily remained untouched by the fear that gripped everyone else. While adults huddled in corners whispering about the end of humanity, Lily still found beauty in the universe. "It's time for dinner," he said. "Mom's waiting." As they walked back to their quarters, they passed groups of civilians, families of station personnel and scientists who couldn't be evacuated. Their faces showed the same haunted look, the knowledge that the unstoppable was coming. In the science section, Dr. Noah Wilson worked frantically with his team. Space Station Horizon housed the combined knowledge of 27 civilizations, the cultural and scientific legacy of species that might soon be extinct. "More power to the containment field," he ordered, adjusting controls on a small chamber that held a tiny fragment of darkness. This speck of a Voidborn had been captured from a previous encounter. It was barely alive, but it was their only chance to study the creatures up close. "Dr. Wilson," called his assistant Maya Patel. "Admiral, Summers is on the line." Noah took the call on his personal screen. Catherine's face appeared, tired but determined. "Please tell me you have something," she said without greeting. "Maybe," Noah replied cautiously. "We've isolated a pattern in the fragment's energy signature. It responds to certain electromagnetic frequencies. Not communication exactly, but recognition. Can we use it as a weapon?" Noah shook his head. "No, but we might be able to create a signal that makes the Voidborn pause or redirect. Buy us a little more time." "Do it," Catherine ordered. "The main entity will reach you in less than 4 hours. I'm on my way from Mars with the last defenses, but we'll be cutting it close." After the call ended, Noah returned to his work, knowing it probably wouldn't be enough. The fragment was too small, too weak to provide all the answers they needed. Meanwhile, in the station's command center, Captain Murphy received a new alert. "Captain, the Voidborn has accelerated," Greg reported, his voice tense. "New arrival estimate 90 minutes. Elaine's heart sank. "Sound the alarm. Battle stations now." Throughout the station, red lights flashed and sirens wailed. Civilians were directed to inner shelters, while military personnel rushed to their posts. In their quarters, Paul Reeves hugged his wife and daughter. "Stay in the shelter," he told them. "I have to go to engineering." Janet held him tight, tears in her eyes. "Be careful." "I will," he promised, knowing it might be a lie. Lily looked up at him calmly. Don't worry, Daddy, everything will be okay. Paul smiled and kissed her forehead, wishing he had her confidence. As he left for his post, Janet led Lily toward the civilian shelter. But in the confusion of rushing people, Lily's hand slipped from her mother's grasp. Instead of following the crowd, Lily felt drawn in the opposite direction. She turned and walked quietly away, following a feeling she couldn't explain. On the command deck, Elaine watched as the defensive fleet moved into attack formation. Admiral Summers' reinforcements were still hours away. They would have to face the Voidborn alone. "It's beautiful in a way," said Greg softly, looking at the approaching darkness on the screen. Its swirling patterns reminded him of ocean waves at night. "Focus, officer," Elaine said sharply, though she understood what he meant. The Voidborn was terrifying, but also mesmerizing. "All weapons charged," reported the tactical officer. "Though we know they won't do much." "They might slow it down," Elaine said. "That's all we need to do. Buy time." As the last civilians entered the shelters, Janet Reeves suddenly realized Lily wasn't beside her. "Lily?" she called, looking around frantically. "Lily!" But her daughter was already far away, walking calmly through empty corridors toward the outer section of the station where the Voidborn would first make contact. "First visual," announced Greg, his voice hushed. On the main screen, they all watched as the vast dark cloud approached the station, dwarfing even the largest battleships. The few remaining telepaths on board suddenly cried out in pain as they sensed the creature's alien mind. The battle was about to begin, but the station's greatest hope wasn't in its weapons or shields. Unknown to everyone, it was in the form of a small girl with blonde braids, walking purposefully toward a meeting that would change everything. The first shots fired against the Voidborn did exactly what everyone feared: nothing. Energy beams from 20 battleships passed through the dark entity as if it were a ghost. The creature didn't even slow down. "Switch to physical projectiles," Captain Murphy ordered from the command center. "Spread formation Delta." The ships adjusted their positions and fired solid metal rounds at the approaching darkness. These too passed through without effect, though the entity seemed to ripple slightly in response. "It's toying with us," Greg said quietly. Elaine pressed the station-wide communication button. "All personnel prepare for breach. This is not a drill." In engineering, Paul worked frantically to ready the station's experimental drive. Sweat dripped down his face as he rerouted power from non-essential systems. His communicator buzzed. It was Janet, her voice filled with panic. "Paul, Lily's missing." Paul froze. "What? Where did you last see her?" "On the way to the shelter. There was a crowd and she was gone when I looked back." Janet was crying now. "I've searched everywhere nearby. The guards won't let me leave the shelter area." "I'll find her," Paul promised. "Stay where you are. I'll bring her back." He turned to his second-in-command. "Sam, take over here." "My daughter is missing." Sam nodded grimly. "Go. We've got this." Paul rushed from engineering, his heart pounding. The station was huge, with countless corridors and rooms. Where would Lily go? Then he remembered how she loved to watch Jupiter from the observation deck. It was worth a try. As he ran, the station shuddered violently. The lights flickered and emergency alarms blared. "Breach in Sector 7, announced the automated system. All personnel evacuate immediately." Paul's blood went cold. Sector 7 was near the observation deck. On the command deck, Elaine watched in horror as the Voidborn made contact with the station's outer hull. Unlike the metal projectiles that had passed through the entity, the creature did not pass through the station. Instead, it seemed to press against it, testing. "What's it doing?" Greg wondered. Dr. Noah Wilson, who had rushed to the command center when the attack began, studied the readings. "It's analyzing our structure, learning." As they watched, a portion of the dark mass flattened and began to seep through the tiniest cracks in the station's outer plating. Alarms blared as sensors detected the breach. "Seal all internal doors," Elaine ordered. "Evacuate Sector 7. But it was too late. The darkness poured through faster now, filling corridors with swirling shadows. Security footage showed crew members running in terror as the entity advanced. Some were touched by tendrils of darkness and simply vanished, absorbed just like the crew of the Starlight venture months ago. "We need to activate the core destruct sequence," Elaine said grimly. "It's our last option." Noah grabbed her arm. "Wait, there's something strange happening in Corridor 42. He pointed to a security feed showing a small figure walking calmly through an empty hallway. It was a child, a little girl with blonde braids walking directly toward the advancing darkness. "Oh my God," Elaine whispered. "There's a child still out there." Paul had reached the observation deck only to find it empty. He was about to leave when he noticed the security monitor. It showed Lily walking down Corridor 42, which led directly to the breach point. "No," he shouted and ran. Corridor 42 was eerily quiet when Lily reached it. The emergency lights cast a red glow on the walls and distant alarms echoed. She wasn't scared, though. She felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. At the end of the corridor, a strange darkness filled the air. It swirled and moved like a living thing. Lily stopped and watched it with curious eyes. The darkness paused, too. Tendrils of shadow reached out, then pulled back, as if uncertain. Paul raced through connecting corridors, trying to reach his daughter. He hit a sealed security door and pounded on the control panel in frustration. "Override!" he shouted. "Chief Engineer Paul Reeves, emergency override." The door slid open reluctantly. Paul continued his desperate run. In the command center, everyone watched the security feed in stunned silence. The void-born entity, which had consumed entire worlds without hesitation, had stopped its advance. It hovered before the small human child, neither advancing nor retreating. "What's happening?" Elaine asked Noah. The scientist shook his head in wonder. "I don't know. This is completely unexpected." On the screen, they saw Lily take a small step forward. The darkness rippled but didn't move away. "Can we hear what's happening?" Elaine asked. Greg adjusted the controls. Audio coming through now. The sound was faint but clear enough. They heard Lily's small voice as she looked up at the cosmic horror that had terrified the galaxy. "Hello," she said simply. "I'm Lily. Are you lost?" The darkness swirled faster, forming shapes that almost looked like symbols before dissolving again. "You're a long way from home, aren't you?" Lily continued, as if having a normal conversation. "That's okay. I get lost sometimes too." Paul had nearly reached Corridor 42 when he was stopped by another sealed door. Through its small window, he could see his daughter standing before the darkness. His heart nearly stopped. "Lily!" he screamed, pounding on the door. But the child didn't hear him. She was focused entirely on the entity before her. The Voidborn's movements had become less chaotic. It formed a roughly spherical shape hovering before the girl. A tendril of darkness extended slowly toward her. In the command center, Elaine rose from her chair. "We have to do something," she said urgently. "Wait," Noah replied, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Look." The tendril of darkness stopped just inches from Lily's face. Instead of flinching, the child smiled. Slowly, she raised her small hand toward the tendril. "It's okay," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." The tendril and her hand met, but unlike every previous contact between the Voidborn and a human, Lily didn't vanish. Instead, a soft blue glow spread from the point of contact, illuminating both the child and the darkness. "Friend?" Lily asked simply. The entire entity froze. The swirling patterns stopped completely. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the darkness began to change. Its color shifted from pure black to a deep blue. The chaotic movements became smooth, almost peaceful. The tendrils that had been reaching throughout the station began to withdraw, pulling back toward the main mass. In engineering, sensors showed power levels stabilizing. The drain that normally accompanied the Voidborn's presence had stopped. In the command center, Noah stared at his readings in amazement. The entity's energy signature is transforming. It's calming down. How is this possible? Elaine whispered. Noah's mind raced with possibilities. The telepaths who tried to communicate with it were trained adults. Their minds approached the entity with scientific methods, or with fear. But this child, she's not afraid, Greg realized. She's just accepting it. Paul had finally bypassed the door's security. He rushed into corridor 42 and stopped short at the sight before him. His daughter stood with her hand outstretched, touching what had once been a world-destroying horror. Now it pulsed with gentle blue light, hovering peacefully before her. Lily, he called softly, afraid to disrupt whatever miracle was happening. The girl turned and smiled at him. Daddy, look, I made a friend. And somehow, looking at his daughter's face and the now calm entity beside her, Paul believed it was true. 1 year after the encounter on Space Station Horizon, Earth was alive again. Cities that had been abandoned were now filled with returning families. The fear that had gripped the galaxy for nearly 9 months had faded into cautious hope. The grand meeting hall of the Galactic Alliance headquarters, Admiral Catherine Summers stood before representatives of 32 species. Beside her stood Dr. Noah Wilson and, most surprisingly, 7-year-old Lily Reeves in a special blue uniform made just for her. 1 year ago, we faced extinction, Catherine began. Today, we celebrate not just our survival, but a new understanding of our universe. On the massive screen behind them appeared images of the transformed void-born entities. No longer dark and chaotic, they now glowed with blue-green light and moved with purpose, rather than hunger. Through Lily Reeves, we have learned that the void-born were never our enemies, Catherine continued. They are ancient consciousness collectors preserving the essence of dying civilizations across the cosmos. Noah stepped forward. Their method of absorption wasn't destruction, but preservation. They believed our defensive actions meant we were a civilization in danger, and they were trying to save us the only way they knew how. The misunderstanding had nearly cost trillions of lives. Once Lily established the first peaceful contact, proper communication became possible. The Voidborn released the consciousness of billions they had absorbed, allowing them to be transferred into new synthetic bodies specially designed by Alliance scientists. Paul and Janet Reeves sat in the front row, watching their daughter with pride and amazement. After that day on the station, Lily had become the primary interpreter between humans and the Voidborn. Her mind, unclouded by adult preconceptions, could understand them in ways no scientist could. Today we formalize the Interspecies Communication Corps, announced Catherine, a new branch of the Alliance that will ensure we never again face destruction through simple misunderstanding. Lily stepped forward, looking small but confident at the podium that had been lowered for her. The Voidborn don't have words like we do, she explained in her clear child's voice. They have feelings and pictures. They didn't know they were scaring us, they were trying to help. Behind her, a door opened and a glowing blue entity floated into the hall. Many of the representatives tensed, remembering the terror these beings had once caused. But this entity moved peacefully, stopping beside Lily. The child smiled up at it. This is my friend. I call him Blue. He's really old, older than stars, and he knows places no one has ever seen. The being pulsed gently, creating patterns of light that somehow conveyed emotion without words. The new communication corps will include children from all species, Noah explained. We've discovered that young minds are uniquely suited to this form of contact. Their thoughts aren't limited by what they believe is possible. In the year since first contact, the Voidborn had become valuable allies. Their ability to exist partially in other dimensions made them perfect explorers of regions previously inaccessible to organic life. They had already helped map dangerous areas of space and locate resources thought lost forever. Later that day, Lily sat with her parents in their new home near the Alliance headquarters. Her room was filled with drawings of her friend and the places they had visited together in carefully controlled expeditions. Are you happy with your new job, sweetie? Janet asked as she tucked Lily into bed. Lily nodded sleepily. Blue says, there are more like him out there. Different kinds of thinking beings, and they're all scared and lonely too. Paul smiled, though his eyes were serious. And you want to meet them all? Someone has to say hello first, Lily said simply. Otherwise, everyone stays scared. As his daughter drifted off to sleep, Paul looked out the window at the night sky. For millennia, humanity had approached the unknown with weapons ready, assuming anything different must be dangerous. It took a child to show them another way, approaching the universe not with fear, but with an open hand and a single word of friendship. In the distance, a blue light rose from the Alliance headquarters, climbing high into the sky before vanishing. Among the stars, another void-born entity heading out to explore, or perhaps to find others of its kind and tell them about the small beings who had finally learned to say hello properly.